Transcendental Transformation, the place where spirituality and transformation unite. Host Miss Raina imparts truth so that you can break through your limiting beliefs and evolve into a deeper consciousness. As you go about your day, remember, before every breakthrough, there is a breakdown. And now, let's start the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Transcendental Transformation. I'm your host, Miss Raina, and today is Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. As always, we're coming live from the Sirius Star System studios right here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I hope all is well with everybody. So we have a homeless clothes drive coming up on February 13th. I know I mentioned it last week, and of course, I'm going to mention it again because we need all of you to donate. Any clothes, blankets, shoes, socks, anything that you can, we will take. And as always, you know that we give the clothes directly to the people on the street and families in need as well. Unfortunately, I know a lot of you are asking about toys, and we're asking about toys for the holidays and everything, but a lot of the places that we work through, a lot of the shelters and a lot of the organizations that we work through are restricting a lot of toys. So I know a lot of you have toys that you wanted to donate for the holidays and everything, and you're still holding them. But please hold on to them just a little bit more because I'm sure that soon they're going to say, okay, well, we're going to start collecting toys again, and then we will collect those for you. But yes, it is February 13th, a Saturday. So if you have any clothes, if not, and you want to give any money, please go to our GoFundMe. And our GoFundMe link is on facebook.com/spirit communities. And you can either contact us or just donate straight to the link, okay? All right, guys, as always, we are coming live from Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, LinkedIn, and Daily Motion. The replays will be in the link below. And but I got to be honest with you, I am super excited for tonight's show because I have an amazing woman here as a guest tonight. Sabrina Osso is a founder and CEO of OSSO SAFE. She is a TEDx speaker, a domestic violence speaker, real estate agent, and a consultant on promoting safety and preventing violence in the workspace, school, and places of residence. Sabrina's personal and professional experience with the subject allows her to bring a unique and holistic approach for employers, landlords, tenants, students, and teachers. She regularly takes continued education courses at Rutgers University to keep abreast of issues associated with home violence. Sabrina is also a professional dancer and actress who uses her performance talents to educate on the subject. As a real estate agent for Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, she is bridging the real estate industry with OSSO SAFE. So please help me welcome Sabrina Osso.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Sabrina. How are you?
I am very well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. It's one of those days, you know, it's a beautiful Tuesday and just enjoying the day out and everything like that. So it's well.
I get it.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Sabrina.
Sure. I mean, you gave my introduction. I thank you for that. I have I like to say, just to be transparent, I am a survivor of violence. My father beat my mother on a regular basis. So, and it took years of therapy to say that, to be comfortable saying that. But I feel that it's very important to say it up front, so that way I'm an example for your audience, really.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't until I moved out that I really started catching up on my life. You know, when you live in that sort of situation, you really can't live your life. You know, your freedom is not there. Your state of mind is not at the best that it can be. You're not free. So it wasn't until I moved out that I started building my life, really. And I graduated with a computer science degree. I did what I was supposed to do. Essentially, I had the full-time job, the computer jobs, and I was making decent money, but I was very unfulfilled, and I realized my passion is dance. I'm meant to be a dancer.
Yeah.
So I that's what I sought out to do. I took classes at all in New York City. Most of my training really is in New York City. I shuffled between three main studios, dance studios: Broadway Dance Center, Steps, and Alvin Ailey. I was completely immersed in the dance world, auditioning. It was very exciting, and I'm so glad that I did that. And then I started, after getting gigs and doing matinee theater, performances, so on and so forth, I started writing a one woman show.
Okay.
And that one woman show was called Home Sweet Home. And I said to myself, I just started writing it. I play different women being abused, and then she goes to her good place. That's where the dancing comes in. And however, she's pulled back into her terror of violence.
Oh,
But the
wow.
show ends very strong, very empowering. And I actually did this with my dance students when I was teaching dance in New Jersey mainly. And I did a lot of research for the show, and I could not believe the statistics that I was finding on how prevalent this is, how common this is. I mean, I knew my trauma growing up in my house, but I didn't know how common it was. And I said to myself, I have to make this into a business. I have to. I am for profit. I don't believe that we can solve the magnitude of this problem as a charity, as a nonprofit. So I said to myself, let me make this into a business so that way I can really help people. And that's how OSSO SAFE was born, really. So I
Wow.
hope I gave a good
Yeah,
summary
absolutely.
of my life.
Absolutely. That is actually very interesting because I've never heard anything like that because I grew up with abuse as well, and you know it's something that seems like it's very common, but just now starting to be talked about and really starting to be put in the forefront on media and everything, which is a really great thing. But what you're doing sounds like you're taking it and making it into something that people can connect to because arts is very is a lot of expression can come through arts and dancing and creativity and everything. And a lot of people are attracted to that. And I think that's very unique of what you do, where you take something of trauma and turn it into something creative to teach people how to understand it.
Right, right. Yes. A taboo subject like home violence is more palpable when you add arts, performing arts, especially. And I'm a dancer. Acting comes pretty naturally to me, but
Yeah.
dancing, I incorporate that, especially for schools and universities, because students connect with that. And
Yes.
I've had people say, "Wow, you played me maybe 5 years ago," or
Yes.
"Wow, you're playing my mother," or "Oh, I could really relate to that." So
Yes.
yes, it's a good point that you're making, because that's what performing arts does. It changes consciousness, it raises consciousness, and it educates.
Absolutely. Did you get into dancing because a lot of people get into things because it's an outlet for their emotional status, and I know that I started engulfing myself into sports because that was the way I got out my aggression because I had no other way to get it out at the time. So was dancing an outlet for you?
No. I unfortunately I didn't start dancing until I late.
Okay.
I wasn't one of those 3, 4, 5 year old children that was able to dance. I had no one in my family to take me to class or anything. I couldn't even think about it. My home life was very traumatic. It was just very dysfunctional, chaotic. So I couldn't even think about dance until I moved out. And but I always had it in me. Like anytime I tried to dance or approach it, I was so distracted by the chaos that was going on in my house. There was no way until I moved out, and then I just started taking classes in the city. first I started in New Jersey, but I said no, I need to be in New York City and take the teachers that will really catapult me as far as a dancer, a performer. So yeah, to answer your question, I couldn't start at the normal age, if you will.
Was that
So
more
so the outlet came later,
okay?
basically.
Was that more complicated for you? Because I know as a child we pick up things a little bit easier and we're more adaptable. Was it a little bit harder for you to get into dancing and feel that outlet, or did it seem to flow naturally?
Good question. When I moved out, I felt very free. You know, I felt very free on multiple aspects. So, and dancing was definitely one of them. Uh, yes, I lost a number of years because you start dancing early, right? Because your body, the earlier you start, the more you can work on your on your facility, and that facility is your body. But I was lucky that my body was, I have a dancer body naturally. So, and I was told by one of my ballet teachers when I point, she said, "You have incredible feet. You have such an arch, and you don't know what you have." And because she had to really work hard for her point, her arch,
Yeah.
whereas I have it naturally. So so I was grateful for that, and I just really disciplined myself. There were teachers that really saw the motivation that I had,
Yeah.
so they really molded me. They really worked with me, and I was taking 12 classes a week. I mean, I was really focused and auditioning like crazy. I was up and down Manhattan in the five boroughs. Um, so to answer your question, I made the best of it. You
Yeah.
know, I made the best of it. I knew where I came from, and I couldn't cry about it. I said to myself, I just have to move forward and make the best of being in New York and taking classes, taking voice lessons, doing monologues, and so on and so forth. So
That's one of the things that I kind of had struggles with motivation and focus because we understand that trauma affects the mind, and a lot of times when the mind is disrupted, especially the shin, it is hard for you to focus. It is hard for you to find motivation because you're so engrossed in your experiences and the pain and suffering that you're going through. So I find it amazing that you were able to take that and still stay as focused as you were and actually start doing something because it was a struggle for me and it made me struggle for many of my years. Even in school struggled, my grades struggled because the more I got caught up in it, and a lot of people do, the more they get caught up in it, the more all of a sudden it starts to affect everything: relationships, school, work, and everything, and it's very hard for them to have a normal life.
no, definitely, and I'm sorry that you went through that. You know, I like to say that because I feel like as survivors, we're not honored or valued. You know, it's kind of always, it's either your fault, you're told that it's your fault, or
Yes.
you can't talk about it, or well, it's, you know, your pain is minimized or undermined. And so I just want to say that up front. And no, believe me, I it is hard to focus on different aspects of your life. You know, one of my ballet teachers, she was actually raped at 4 years old, and she was silent for up until she was 8 years old. And what got her out of her silence was ballet. And I thought that was amazing because, and she made the best of her situation. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, she got married young just to get out of her house, her chaotic house. And and she danced with Nureyev, with Baryshnikov.
Wow.
Amazing, amazing. She's an amazing woman, and she was one of my main ballet teachers. And um, so I feel like we are affected in different ways. You know, whether your health maybe is sacrificed a little bit, or like you said, you can't focus at school. but you make the best of it. Maybe you're doing something at school that is totally unrelated to your passion, but you do it because you're so mixed up, so you can't even think about the arts or whatever it is that you want to do. So it affects us differently. Something will suffer, so it's up to us to not continue the abuse,
Yes.
to make the best out of our lives, to kind of live in the moment, and to really turn our pain into power.
Yes. I couldn't agree more. All right, Sabrina, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back after these messages from I Am Evolution.
The human experience is changing, and consciousness is evolving into something higher than any of us could ever imagine. As we transform into more sentient beings, a new world of connected consciousness is taking place. Welcome to I Am Evolution, the movement in human development that transforms the human experience into a deeper consciousness through perspective and duality. Are you ready to be a part of the next stage in human evolution? Call I Am Evolution today to schedule your appointment at 561-318-0006. That's 561-318-0006. Or email us at iamevolution@protonmail.com.
All right, everybody, we are back. And if you're just joining us, we have the fabulous Sabrina Osso. So Sabrina, before we went on break, you were talking about, how your life was and how you were motivated through your trauma to dance and do other things. And it was really inspiring. And you started a company called OSSO SAFE. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. At OSSO SAFE, we focus on three markets: schools or universities, workplaces, and places of residence, where we combine education and technology to promote safety and prevent violence in those three markets, with the focus, though, in real estate, essentially in residency. So, and we do this by education, and technology, as I mentioned. We are introducing into the market something called the OSSO SAFE certification, and I could talk about that perhaps later in the interview. But that's a brief summary of
Okay.
OSSO SAFE.
Okay. So you said you focus on real estate. How does OSSO SAFE and domestic violence tie into the real estate?
Well, if you think about it, and I thought about this formulating my company. If you think about it, all crimes that happen regarding home violence, and I prefer to say home violence versus domestic violence, because, and I say this in my TEDx talk, home violence or domestic violence has such a stigma that it is a woman's problem, and clearly it is not. And secondly, it assumes that all of the victims are female, and that's not true either. So I prefer to say home violence. It's more inclusive. So it's whoever you live with at home. It could be your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your ex, your children, your stepchildren. And an episode of violence can occur in any one of those combinations. So I prefer to say home violence, just to explain that, to clarify. Every episode of violence happens in some type of residence, if you think about it, the root of it.
Yes.
Whether it be in a townhouse, a co-op, a condo, a single family home, a multifamily dwelling, a two-family home, a villa, a mansion, a mobile home, it doesn't matter. It happens in some type of residence. So wouldn't it be logical, wouldn't it be beneficial to focus on residency, to really make home safe? Because if you make home safe, then your schools will be safe, universities will be safe, workplaces, your movie theaters, your public places, your malls, everything will be safe. But the focus has to be in residency. So we focus on that, and we're focusing on the landlord tenant portion of the real estate industry, where we're introducing into market, as I mentioned, something called the OSSO SAFE certification. And part of that is the OSSO SAFE Home Sweet Home package. And it consists of a policy, a seminar, and an app. And this is something for landlords and tenants, where tenants have to sign a policy to say, okay, I as a landlord, I promise to provide you a safe space for you to live. You, in turn, as my tenant, you promise to not act in any way, shape, or form that is abusive. Otherwise, you, the abuser, gets immediately evicted from the premises. And we go into full knowledge knowing that that would be the consequences. So it's not a surprise. And then we hold a seminar for all of the tenants, whether they are new or existing. And in this seminar, we go over facts, statistics, warning signs, definitions of abuse, the difference between abuse and discipline, just to name a few items. So that way everyone is on the same page, everyone is held accountable, and you are educated and you know how to practice safety, how to practice nonviolence. And then there's technology incorporated in that to remove the he said, she said factor. So this package is core to the certification. And this is a blanket education. We never single anyone out. We never say, oh, you look like a victim and you look like an abuser and you look like nothing happens in your residence. We never ever say that. I wish, Miss Raina, that I had this growing up.
Absolutely.
Because I could tell you, if I did, my reality as a child growing up in the house that I did would have been much, much different. So residency is where it's at. That's our focus with OSSO SAFE.
You know, one of the things that you said that I absolutely love, because I like that. I don't like to say disability, because the word disability implies a stigma, and all of a sudden you're labeled as something and it affects the mind. So when you said, well, I like to say home violence because it's all inclusive. And I think that as a society, we forget about that. Yes, men can be abused as well, because yes, there are maybe more women that get abused, but men get abused, and we kind of blow it off because we're like, well, you're a man, you're bigger, you're stronger, you shouldn't be. But you know, abuse is abuse, whether it's mental, emotional,
Right.
physical. It doesn't have to be. And I think that's important, because a lot of men, and I know that through my work, a lot of men have come to me and said, you know what, I feel silly even saying this, because, you know, I mean, look, there's this 90-pound woman, but she's constantly abusing me. And it's like, I can't do anything because, you know, the cops laugh at me, I've taken, and my friends, and it's kind of like this place where it's like, well, yes, women have where they can't speak, men have where they can't speak. And I think that it's great that you're encompassing a certification, because yes, education for one is the key for people to understand. That doesn't mean it's going to stop everything, but if people understand that they have outlets and that they have safe spaces to go to in their trouble or in their hour of need or whatever's going on in their life, then I think that it changes the mindset. And I think that, yes, absolutely great that so many people have that outlet, because yes, I used to live across the street from people that were very abusive, and they would fight all the time, and it was both of them actually, and it was just such a toxic environment to live in. And the landlords would say, well, I can't do anything about it. So I think what you're proposing and you're creating is a very useful tool.
Thank you so much, Miss Raina. I really appreciate that. Yes, men definitely can get abused. In fact, there is a statistic that 1 out of 7 men is abused. And it could be verbal, physical, or sexual, or a combination of all three. So this is people need to open their eyes to that. And I say that as well. Like you said, abuse is abuse. It doesn't matter the gender that the hand occupies. It's horrible either way, whether it's the man or the woman that's being the victim or abuser. It's horrible either way. So this is very important to realize that. And men suffer when they are in an abusive environment. They're suffering the stigma on their end as well as women. Yes, a lot of the victims are women, but it doesn't have to be the case. And I could tell you, as a child, it's traumatic, whether dad is beating up mom or mom is beating up dad. And this affects, yes, residency. If you're a neighbor, like you said, if you're a neighbor, and it may not be happening in your household, but if a couple of doors down, there's abuse, you'll hear screaming and yelling, maybe kids crying, cops coming to the residence. It just disrupts everything. So we feel at OSSO SAFE this certification is going to help on multiple levels. It will diminish it and eventually prevent it, because with the residency, with the certification, we don't wait for an episode of violence to occur. It becomes a standard condition of residency right off the bat as a part of tenancy. And quite frankly, that's how it should be, period.
We live in such a PC world where everything's got to be said the correct way because we become so sensitive. And in some ways, learning to adapt and not be so harsh is a wonderful thing. But then there's that oversensitivity. And one of the things that you said is that there is a difference between abuse and discipline. And I know a lot of parents sit there and say, well, you know, and I'm afraid to even sometimes yell at my child or when they're throwing a tantrum, because people start looking at you and start saying, oh, well, that's child abuse right away. And a lot of times, you know, it's a lot of times it's human nature for people to fight and argue, and especially in relationships, we all have complications. How do we know the difference between when it's abuse and when it's just something regular?
Yes, abuse instills fear and discipline instills education. So that's a big difference right there. So when and a lot of abusers will say that, no, I'm disciplining my child. But if you're beating up your child, first of all, you should never beat up your child. Never, never, never. Your child will understand right from wrong just by you being firm with them and yelling at them. I mean, I'm Italian, so I know it's kind of like a
Yeah.
nationality thing. Like, no, you get your mother's or father's shoe thrown at you. It's discipline.
Yes.
No, it's actually abuse. It's like a cultural thing, but. So I get that, you know, there's cultural ways to discipline, but if your child is afraid of you,
Yes.
and your child has bruises, or you're telling your child that they're a brat, a monster, a prissy little, you're ungrateful, you're nothing, this is all verbal disparagement.
Yes.
That's all abuse. If you are not encouraging your child, if you are giving your child inappropriate chores to do, if they're a little child and you're telling them to vacuum and do laundry for the whole family, meanwhile they're teeny tiny, they're like 5 years old, this is all abuse. um, yes, and I've heard also the scenario where parents don't discipline their kids and then the child gets to be abusive to the parent. But that's again, you're the parent, you have to discipline your kid. Your kid cannot be throwing things and slamming doors and mouthing off to other children. You have to discipline them and say, look, okay, you're not going to watch TV, or you're not going to be on the tablet. You They have to learn, and that's okay. Children need to be disciplined.
Yes.
So there are, and this is what we teach at OSSO SAFE and in our seminars, the difference, and then we put it into practice, so that way parents know the difference, and it is indeed a practice. It isn't just one and done. So there's multiple facets to it, but I know of families that have it right, where there is no violence, there is no abuse, there's no chaos, there's no dysfunction. Yes, there is discord. You're going to have disagreements. You're going to have arguments, but it never should cross the line of abuse. Not verbally, not physically, not sexually. Period. Over and out. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And then and one of the best things that I think that you said was if it induces fear, because that was, I mean, how many of us been told? I was raised, my family was half Hispanic, half Italian, so that tells you everything. And you know, there's old traditions, and you know, it's funny because at years ago they looked at discipline abuse as discipline, and there was nothing wrong with it. If you did something wrong, as they would say, you would get, you know, you'd get punished, you get spanked, you'd get hit, and you deserved it. and we didn't understand the effects of the mind. And I don't think that my family did until they were older, because there was a lot of regret with my father towards the end of his life. And I think as he got older, he realized that the methods of discipline, as they said, actually invoked fear and pain and suffering, and it created this whole downward spiral towards me, and it affected my life. And I think he felt so guilty about that, and a lot of people do. And I think that, and a lot of parents are sit there and say, well, you know what, I don't want to get DCFS after me or anything like that, because my child's screaming. And I think that's really important for people to understand, is not let the fear of what, the possibilities of other people's sensitivities or anything. As long as you are educated and understand the difference of between abuse and discipline, I think that will steer you in the direction that you need to go with your children or your or partners or anybody.
Right, right. I couldn't agree more. And just a tip, a quick tip: when parents are in public with their children and the child has a tantrum, or they want something, they see something, and a good tip is, before you even enter the public place, whether it be a store, whether it be a movie theater, a mall, have a discussion with your child and say, look, little Sally, little Timmy, uh, mommy and daddy, and be honest with them. You can be, and children want honesty, they need honesty. Mommy and daddy, they can't afford that. You could buy one thing, we're going to go into the store, you could buy one thing, and then that's it. And that way you have that discussion beforehand. You're not going to scream, you're not going to yell, because then you feel bad and I feel bad, and it's kind of embarrassing. And I love you, know that I love you, and I know that you love me, so can we agree on that? Have these talks before you enter a public place. And I can assure you, the child will understand and hear you, and an episode will be less likely in a public place, in a store, because you had that talk and you were honest with them. So I hope that helps, just to give a quick tip on that. But children need to be disciplined, absolutely, but it's education. The child knows that they're being educated, and they know that they're loved, and that love doesn't hurt. Like abusers will say, no, but I love you. Meanwhile, you beat the crap out of them.
Yes.
And you humiliated them, and you make them feel insignificant. So that's not discipline, that's abuse. So it's all a learning curve. It's all a practice and learning over and over again, repetition.
The feeling of insignificance rings out throughout our life. I think that's one of the things that most people hold on to from their childhood. As we know that our childhood is the foundation for all of our challenges in our adulthood, and all of our hang-ups and all the things that we're going through, our emotional distress. And one of the things that I've heard throughout the years was, I feel insignificant. I don't, and that self-worth is diminished. And I say, well, where does it always start at? And surprisingly, a lot of times it does start either with the parents and continued with the relationships, or it starts with the relationships when they were young, and it could be just their friendships and everything, where they are undervalued. And I grew up in the city of Chicago, where it was in a bad area, and kids weren't nice, and it was already, you had to learn to fend for yourself and fight one another, and to be able to survive at such a young age. And that mentality starts to kick in, that survival mentality starts to kick in, and it's hard to live life when you're in fight or flight all the time. And as an adult,
Right.
how can we have a healthy relationship if we're in fight or flight? So but Sabrina, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after these messages from I Am Evolution.
The human experience is changing, and consciousness is evolving into something higher than any of us could ever imagine. As we transform into more sentient beings, a new world of connected consciousness is taking place. Welcome to I Am Evolution, the movement in human development that transforms the human experience into a deeper consciousness through perspective and duality. Are you ready to be a part of the next stage in human evolution? Call I Am Evolution today to schedule your appointment at 561-318-0006. That's 561-318-0006. Or email us at imevolution@protonmail.com.
All right, everybody, we are back. If you're just joining us, this is the last part of the show, and I have the fabulous Sabrina Ossos. And Sabrina, I am just having a fabulous time with you. You have such a wealth of information and great information, things that people don't talk about. One of the things that I heard in one of your interviews is that you made a statement that said the responsibility of safety should not be in the hands of should be in the hands of the victim. What do you mean by that?
Should not be
Oh,
in the
should
hands of the
not?
victims.
Okay,
Yes,
should
yes,
not. Okay,
yes. This goes back to residency.
okay,
We have here, like in this country, on any given day, as many as 20,000 people are seeking refuge at an emergency shelter. That is an enormous amount, and those are just the ones that are documented. And I feel that how can we expect a woman or a man, for that matter, with their children, if they have children, to leave the residence, uproot their lives, go to a shelter or go to someone's house or be on the run, and then the kids maybe have to miss school and just have their lives all upside down, when what you could do is evict the abuser. Evict the abuser. And this goes back to where the responsibility should be in the real estate industry, the sports industry, lawmakers and politicians, schools and universities. We really have to stop putting the responsibility on the victim to say, well, why don't you just leave him or her? They don't, and we go over 50 reasons why victims don't leave. Everything from money. A big part of it is money. If your abuser is the breadwinner, you're supposed to leave. To religion, to you got blamed from your family, you are in isolation, children, maybe you're gay, you're bisexual, and your abuser is going to disclose this in public. So there's so many reasons. So we really need to make this a standard condition of residency. So I hope I answered the question.
well, 20,000 emergency, that blows my mind. I don't think people, because our media is so focused on giving us garbage a lot of times that we don't hear the things we need to hear. And honestly, I didn't know that number until just right now, until you said it, and that just blows my mind. I work a lot with the homeless, and when I started working with the homeless and families in need and stuff, I started realizing the numbers that were out there, and I
Right.
started saying, well, why isn't this talked about? Why isn't this at the forefront? Why is this just seem to be hush hush and pushed away? And I think that home violence, as you said, is hushed, and that's just and people need to know that 20,000 people go to, and that's just, like you said, just the numbers. But evicting evicting the abuser, you said, well, yeah, that's going to be hard because a lot of people tend to stay with their abuser, and then they plead for the person because of fear or money or whatever. And so how would you be working around someone who was saying, well, you got to go, but the other person is supposed to stay, or the other person is supposed to go too, especially sometimes that abusee sticks with that abuser out of fear.
Right. Well, in an OSSO SAFE certified property, it's no surprise. It's expected of victim, or I'm sorry, of tenants to know that that is what's going to happen. The abuser gets evicted, and we then go in with therapists to kind of de-victimize the victims, including the children. So we really focus on empowerment, on positivity, focusing on getting them self-sufficient, and to say, look, you deserve to be in a good relationship. We cannot help you. It's not allowed that the abuser comes back. It's just how an OSSO SAFE certified property is run. You
Yes.
don't have to live here you knew going in that this is what would happen. And victims really need to understand that they've been brainwashed.
Yes.
They've been brainwashed into thinking that they can't make it on their own, that they're nothing, that the kids have to be subjected to all of this abuse. So it's like a chain reaction. So the focus is to break the cycle, break the chain. So the abuser can't come back. It's how can you clean up something if the mess is still there? So
Absolutely.
if we make this a standard condition of residency, I believe that this will really catch on, and tenants are not going to want anything less.
Well, I think that's the most important part about what you do is the fact that you give the abusee kind of like a lifeline because when they're getting that abuser taken away, it's a part of them that they've held on to because it's a false sense of security, it's a false sense of love, it's a false sense of wealth, and so you're taking that part away. And in the other hand, you're saying, okay, well, we're here for you. We're going to help you with therapy. We're going to help you get back on your feet. We're going to help you do all these things. And I think that will be easier because I know if I was in that situation, those would be my main concerns. Well, especially if I have children, how can I support myself if I can't, or if I am not making money? If he was making money or she was making money, whoever our partners are nowadays. But I think that's the most important. And that's what I find about your program is so wonderful is it gives them that lifeline.
Thank you. Yes, yes. There's several components to it, but that is the core of it, of the certification.
One of the other things that I noticed that you said was, you know, uh, can you explain? You made a statement. You said abused should not be a part of anyone's residency ever. Just because your parents did it doesn't give you the right to do it. I know that sounds common sense, but a lot of people may not understand that.
Right. We feel, again, this is when you put your keys in your lock at home, whatever that home is, like I said, a townhouse, a co op, a condo, you should feel safe. You should feel that it's your sanctuary. It shouldn't feel like hell. It shouldn't feel like you're entering a war zone. And for victims, that's what it feels. And this is why, with this certification, the responsibility of safety is also handled by the landlord, by the homeowner, the property owner, the property manager. So that way you're not held to it 100% because we've been doing that and it's not working. It's just not working. And as parents, I find a lot of people say, well, that's my kid. I could do whatever I want to my kid because that's my kid. You don't get to say what I do to my kid. And we're saying, look, you're a parent. There are things to be expected of you as a parent, and as a child, abuse should not be a part of anyone's residency, period, over and out. Because then you're not a parent, you're an abuser. So, and you should not have access to your child in a way, because then that child will become a future victim or a future abuser. And what's the point of that? There are 15 million children in the United States that witness violence in their own homes each and every year. We don't need to add to that. Those are just the ones that are documented. We need to diminish it and prevent it, not the reverse. So I hope I explained
My
what that means.
Absolutely. My sister was a foster care, and she would care for foster children. And one of the children that she had came from a very abusive household. The mother was in gangs on drugs, and they took her away. And she was just very aggressive all the time. Would bite kids in school, start screaming throw tantrums, throw herself under, and nobody knew what to do. And people were like afraid to be around her because she just started screaming, saying, "You hit me!" And every time she went back to see her mother, who she so desperately wanted to be with, she would come back even worse because the mom would play mental and physical abuse games with her. And it was just, and it's so hard to reach children at that age because they don't know any better. They don't know the idea that your mom or dad is not being nice to you. And sometimes the mind tricks itself into survival mode of saying, well, no, my mom's not doing this because they gotta love me because they tell me it once in a while, or they buy me something once in a while, so that's showing me love. And it's hard because for her it was so hard because the system only allowed her to do so much for the child, and at the same time, because she wasn't the mom herself, it was like this very tedious thing, and we just watched, and eventually the state came in and had to intervene and everything like that. But I just thought of this poor child, what they were going through, and just bouncing from home to home and not understanding that the mom is being very abusive to her.
Right. In an OSSO SAFE certified property, what we are encouraging and introducing into the real estate industry is that the child, they they get to choose who they want to live with, but the abusive parent is not one of those choices. We feel that the child should have rights and they should exercise those rights. And if there's a family member like an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, a foster parent, a close family friend that is willing to take in that child and care for them, and yes, that the child that you're describing, it sounds like she needed a lot of. It was a female. It was
Yes.
a female child.
Yeah.
She needed a lot of therapy, continued therapy, and not to go to the mother. Don't go to the abusive mother, because then it's like you take 2 steps forward but you go 5 steps
Yes.
backward. If the mother is so messed up, why would you do that? Just because she's the mother. You want the child to have optimum well-being, health, and safety. So this is what we're introducing in the certification to minimize the chances of that happening, where the child is continuously suffering. And for what?
Exactly. And it was heartbreaking because my sister was very good to this child, and it was sad to see that the child wanted, and I get it, it's her mom, and I get it. And bouncing from home to home, it's really hard for children to understand domestic violence, or I mean home violence, as you say. And it's really hard for them to understand. As adults, we sit there and say, okay, well, we need to do this, but it's really heartbreaking for them. And we don't understand that we're being brainwashed at such a young age, and even as adulthood, we may never experience any type of violence or abuse in any sort until we're older, and all of a sudden the brain starts to trick itself, because the whole goal of the brain and the body is to create homeostasis. It wants to be at that level, and so it will start to change perceptions and start to change the idea of what we're experiencing based on what our needs are meant to be filled. And I just think that this is amazing, because no one wants to go to a home that feels like a war zone. I know my last relationship was over like 15, 16 years ago, and it was so toxic that I didn't want to go home ever. I always spent the night at my friends' houses. It was so, and I was like, and one day I just woke up, I was like, why am I in this relationship if I'm afraid to go to my own house? And I had to wake up and realize that. And I said, you know what, these patterns are repeating itself, but a lot of people don't have that understanding. And that's why I had to put you on the show, because I was like, all right, here's a woman who's taking her experiences and creating such a wonderful project and such a wonderful outlet for people who are experiencing home violence, that whether it be man or woman, that it's just such a wonderful thing you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. The sooner we can nip it in the bud, the better. With children, the sooner we can educate them and put it into practice, the better, really.
It's one of those things where I think that it will be one of those things that catch on, because I know if I we my family was had several buildings, and I know that there were buildings, like I said earlier, that I grew up in, that there was just fighting, and I was just like, oh my god, this is it's not it's not only toxic for the people in the thing, but it affects everybody else around it. And
Right.
if you're hearing it through the ceilings and everything else,
Right.
or even across your neighbors, you can't do anything, because if you do anything, they could press it's so, and something like this that can step in legally and do this, I think is just amazing.
Thank you. Thank you, Miss Raina. I appreciate that.
So we're gonna wrap up the show. Do you have anything that you want to offer our guests for listening, or do you want to give out your information or anything?
Sure. My website is ossosafe.com. My direct email address is sabrina at ossosafe.com. My TEDx talk is broadcast. It's under the title "If You're a Victim of Home Violence, Don't Leave, Stay." I'm on all this social media, the major Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Alignable, Instagram. I have my all of the information that we went over on my website. Um, I thank you for this opportunity, Miss Raina.
Absolutely. Perfect. Absolutely. No. And we'll have all your information popping up and in the description below. But thank you, Sabrina, so much for being on the show. You were an amazing guest, and I hope to have you back in the future. So
Thank you. Yes, I would love that. Thank you so much.
all right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed today's show, and I hope you enjoyed the fabulous Sabrina Osso. Guys, remember to follow us on our Facebook at facebook.com/transcendental transformation. Our YouTube is Transcendental Transformation Radio Show. Sign up or visit our website, soulandspiritguide.com, and sign up for our newsletter to receive special access to hidden shows, VIP access to the website, and special guest offers. And if you have any questions for me or Sabrina, email me at transcendentaltransformations@gmail.com. And always remember to believe in yourself. And it's not our abilities or our talents that make us who we are, but it is our choices. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.